that feeling when you've been totally misunderstood? Like a friend takes a joke the wrong way, or some crazy rumor starts spreading and you just can't shake it? Well, what if I told you that one of the most famous immortals in history has been the victim of a similar, but way, way more epic public relations disaster, one that's lasted for over 1,000 years? And it all started because of a simple pun. Okay, let's just dive right in. We are going to deconstruct one of the most famous idioms out there: dog bites Lu Dongbin. But here's the big question. Was there ever an actual dog involved in this story? I think the answer is going to completely change how you see this thing forever.
For centuries, people have used this saying to describe someone who repays kindness with, well, malice. Someone who just can't recognize a good person when they see one. It paints this picture of a super benevolent immortal, Lu Dongbin, getting senselessly attacked. But, as we're about to find out, that common understanding? It's all built on a massive, millennia-long misunderstanding.
So let's kick things off with the immortal's really, really bad luck. The backstory of a seriously bad rap. And we're not just talking about any old immortal here. This is a cultural icon who has been unfairly slandered by history, all thanks to what might just be the most consequential pun of all time. So meet Lu Dongbin. In the world of Taoism, this guy is basically an A-list celebrity. He's one of the legendary 8 immortals, famous for being ridiculously good-looking and for carrying a sword that could slay demons. But for all his divine power, he couldn't protect himself from his most persistent enemy, a really, really bad reputation. All right, to get how this all went so wrong, we have to go back, way back, to a time before Lu Dongbin was even an immortal. This is where our story begins. The playboy meets the scholar, a fateful encounter between two guys whose lives were about to get tangled up permanently. On one side, you've got Lu Dongbin, the quintessential rich kid. He was a golden bachelor, had a huge fortune, and underneath it all, a pretty kind heart. And on the other side, you have Go Yao, a brilliant scholar with a mind like a steel trap, but so poor he was basically living off stale bread. Total opposites, right? Yet Lu Dongbin saw this massive potential in this broke genius. So Lu Dongbin makes Go Yao this incredible offer. He invites him to come live in his home, promising to pay for all his food, his lodging, his tutors, everything. There was just one condition. Go Yao had to focus completely on his studies to pass the big imperial exams. For Go Yao, this was an absolute game changer. And, of course, he accepted immediately. And just like that, their friendship was sealed. For years, everything was going great. Go Yao studied like crazy, he eventually became a high-ranking official, and he always promised he'd repay his friend's kindness. But then, destiny decided to throw a massive wrench in the works, setting the stage for a grand-scale prank that would test their friendship in a way nobody could have ever predicted. Out of nowhere, a mysterious fire completely wipes out Lu Dongbin's family fortune. Just like that, he goes from a wealthy aristocrat to a desperate man. With nowhere else to go, he travels all the way to the capital to get help from his now successful friend, Go Yao. But here's where it gets weird. For a whole month, Go Yao treats him to these lavish feasts, but every single time Lu Dongbin tries to bring up a loan, he dodges the question. Feeling totally betrayed and humiliated, Lu Dongbin storms off, convinced his old friend has completely abandoned him. Can you just picture Lu Dongbin on that long trip home? His heart is just heavy with disappointment, probably thinking he's going to have to sell his last few possessions. He finally walks into his village, expecting to see nothing but the charred ruins of his old life. But that is not what he saw. No, instead of ruins, there's this magnificent new mansion standing right where his old home was. But what's even crazier is that the entire courtyard is draped in white mourning cloths, and right in the middle of it all sits a huge black coffin. His wife is there, weeping, and she tells him that Go Yao had sent a message saying Lu Dongbin had died suddenly in the capital. At this point, Lu Dongbin is absolutely livid. I mean, can you blame him? He thinks this is the ultimate insult, and he's about to find out what's really going on, because the truth is in that coffin. Fueled by a mix of pure rage and total confusion, he decides there's only one thing left to do. He grabs the nearest axe he can find. He's completely convinced this coffin is Go Yao's final cruel joke, so he walks right up to it, and with a furious shout, he smashes the lid to pieces. He was ready for anything, ready to face whatever horror was inside, but what he actually found was the last thing he ever expected. Inside the coffin, no body. Instead, it was filled to the absolute brim with gold and jewels, and sitting right on top of all that treasure was a letter from Go Yao. It explained everything. See, Gu Yao had been testing Lu Dongbin's character, just like Lu Dongbin had once tested his. The house was already rebuilt, and the coffin, which is a symbolic gift for promotion and prosperity, had all the money he'd ever need. And, of course, that little postscript just to rub it in a little. So it was all just a giant prank between two really good friends. So how on earth did this heartwarming story turn into a PR disaster? How did it get so twisted that it became an idiom about betrayal by a dog? Well, this is where the nosy neighbors and a simple linguistic slip-up come into play. Okay, to understand what happened next, you need to know about something called a homophonic pun, or xie yin gang. It's basically a play on words where different words happen to sound the same. And in this story, one little sound-alike is the culprit behind this whole mess. So here it is, the crucial point. The friend's name was Go Yao, but when you say it out loud, it sounds almost identical to the words Go Yao, which literally means dog bite. See where this is going? A person's name on one hand and two words describing an animal attack on the other. The village gossips saw all the drama unfold. The new mansion, the coffin, Lu Dongbin's rage. They heard people talking about his friend Go Yo Mao, but their ears picked up Go Yao, dog bite. So they just mashed the dramatic story together with a misheard name, and a new, much juicier story was born. Dog Bites Lu Dongbin was simply more scandalous, it was catchier, and frankly, a lot easier to remember than the complicated truth. And just like that, Gu Yao, the loyal friend, was basically erased from history and replaced by a metaphorical backstabbing dog. But the real truth is, he was an incredible friend. He was resolute enough to focus on his studies for years, efficient enough to secretly rebuild a mansion in no time, and, well, a master prankster with a very specific, if not slightly cruel sense of humor. He wasn't the villain, he was the hero of this story. So there you have it. The real story isn't about betrayal at all. It's about a deep friendship, an elaborate prank, and the unbelievable power of a single misunderstood pun. So the next time you hear someone say dog bites Lu Dongbin, maybe you won't think of a dog at all. Maybe you'll think of a loyal friend named Gao Yao and the greatest PR disaster an immortal ever had to face.